We are holding on Daf Kaf Zayin Amud Aleph. That's what we're doing today. We're by where it says Gufa. It's, first word on the line is Gufa. So, says the Gemara, yeah. Already turn on this recording. No. Okay, so Daf Kaf Zayin Amud Aleph. We're holding by where it says Gufa. So, says the Gemara, Gufa, Amar Shemuel. So we're quoting something that we said before in the Gemara that we did yesterday. Amar Shemuel, Chalatz la'achayot lo nifteru tzarot. So, if you have one guy and two of his brothers died. So, two of his brothers were married to two sisters and to other people also. So, these ladies fall to him to Yibum. Okay? So, you have Rachel and Leah, and Rachel's Tzara and Leah's Tzara. Fall to him to Yibum. Okay? A very simple case. His one brother is married to Rachel and another girl. Oh, another brother is married to Leah and another girl. Yeah. And then they both die, and these four ladies fall to Reuven. To this brother. Yeah, so Shmuel said, Chalatz la'achayot lo nifteru tzarot. In such a case, if he does chalitza to the sisters, the tzarot don't become piturot, and letzarot nifteru achayot. But if he does chalitza to the tzarot, the sisters become piturot. And the simple understanding was because since you can't do yibum to any of the sisters, because they're both achot zekukato, he has a zikah to each one's sister, so chalitza to the sisters is going to be a lower level chalitza since he's not able to do yibum, and that type of chalitza won't cover the tzarot, the other wives. But Shmuel also taught chalatz ba'alat haget lo niftera tzara. The tzara niftera ba'alat haget. So if, let's say, two ladies fall to a guy to do yibum, and he does chalitza he gives a get to one of them. Okay? So let's say one brother was married to two wives, he died. These two ladies fell to this guy to yibum. He gave a get to one of them. So if he does chalitza to the one who he gave a get to, so the other one is not pitura. She needs her own chalitza. But if he gave a chalitza to the other one, that covers the ba'alat haget.
What if he gave chalitza to the one who gave a get?
Two ladies fell to him to yibum.
Okay.
He gave a get to one of them. He didn't do chalitza or yibum. He gave a get.
So the other one.
And then afterwards, he does chalitza. If he does chalitza to her, it doesn't affect the other one. But if he does chalitza to the other one, it affects the ba'alat haget. The reason is because since he gave a get, the way Rashi explains the get doesn't really fully work, but the get does something to weaken the zikah, and therefore the chalitza that's done is considered a lower grade, a lower level chalitza, and it doesn't cover the other lady. Chalatz leba'alat hama'amar lo niftera tzara, letzara niftera ba'alat hama'amar. Also, if let's say two ladies fell to him to yibum from one brother, he did ma'amar to one of those ladies, and then he decided he doesn't want anymore. So if he does chalitza to the lady who he did ma'amar to, that doesn't cover the other lady. Because the lady who he did ma'amar to, chalitza doesn't really fully do anything. She requires a get as well for the ma'amar. So chalitza doesn't cover all of his bases. But if he does chalitza to the other lady who he did not do ma'amar to, that cuts him off from the entire zikah of both of them. So just let's focus on the first case. The first case was two ladies and their tzarot fall to this man. So if he does chalitza to the sisters, that doesn't cover the tzarot. But if he does chalitza to the tzarot, that covers the sisters. So the Gemara says, Ma'ishna la'achayot de lo nifteru tzarot. How come when he does chalitza to the sisters, it doesn't cover the tzarot? Because he's not allowed to do yibum to any of those sisters, because he has a zikah to the first sister, and then he can't do yibum to her sister. He has zikah to the second sister, so he can't do yibum to the first sister. It's achot ishto bezikah. It's his the one who he has a zika to's sister. He can't do yibum. And since he cannot do yibum, that type of chalitza that he does is a lower level chalitza. It's a weak chalitza. It's called chalitza psula, and it doesn't cover the tzarot. So if that's the case, so chalatz letzarot nami lo lifteru achayot. If he does chalitza to the tzara, that also should not cover the sisters. Meaning, we're saying if he does chalitza to the tzarot, that covers the sisters, and he doesn't need to do a separate chalitza for the sisters. Well, the Gemara says, why not? Dehavya lahu tzarot achot isha bezika. Though he should also have to do a separate chalitza for the sisters, because when he does a chalitza to the tzara, it's also a scenario where he's not allowed to do yibum, because it's the tzara of the one who he has a zika to his sister. So he's not allowed to do yibum to her either. So the question of the Gemara is like this, just to try to simplify. Whenever a person does chalitza in a scenario where he's not allowed to do yibum, so that chalitza is not a strong chalitza, and he has to do it to each woman. Okay? That seems to be the underlying thing. What if there's a situation where he's allowed to do yibum and he's allowed to do chalitza and he does chalitza, that chalitza covers everybody. But if it's a situation where he's only allowed to do chalitza, he's not allowed to do yibum, and he does yibum, and he does chalitza, that's a weak chalitza. That chalitza does not cover everybody. So in the case where he does chalitza to one of the sisters, or to two of the sisters, so he wasn't allowed to do yibum to those sisters, therefore that chalitza that he did is a weak chalitza, it doesn't cover the tzarot. So the Gemara is asking, well, also if he does chalitza to the tzarot, he's not allowed to do yibum to the tzarot, because it's the co-wife it's the tzara of the one who he has a zika to's sister. So it's tzarat achot zikukato. It's the tzara of the sister of the one who he has a zika to. He's not allowed to do yibum to her either. If he's not allowed to do yibum to her either, her chalitza should not be a strong chalitza that covers everybody.
Chalitza is a word.
I don't know what you mean.
If you are not allowed to do yibum.
Yes.
That's mean.
Oh, that's what you're asking? No,
Yeah.
So there are certain cases where there is still a zika. You're right. In general, kol ha'ola le'yibum, ola le'chalitza. Kol she'enu ola le'yibum, enu ola le'chalitza. When there's no, but that's for an erva. That's when there's no zika. Over here, there is a zika. He's not married to anyone. None of them is an erva to him. It's not like it's his wife's sister. It's just two sisters fell to him to yibum at the same time. Practically, he can't do yibum to both of them.
Yeah.
He can't do yibum to either one of them because each one, because we're saying yesh zika, he has a zika to one, he can't do yibum to the other. He has a zika to the other one, he can't do yibum to the first one. But chalitza is still required in such a case. Okay, so the Gemara's question is, how come we're not saying that if he does yibum, if he does chalitza to the tzara, he also requires a separate chalitza to the wives themselves? Because if he does yibum to the tzara, he cannot do yibum to the tzara. Therefore, he can also not do the chalitza that he does to the tzara is also going to be a chalitza psula. It's going to be a weak chalitza. So that's the question of the Gemara. How come it's not a two-way street? We're saying only if he does chalitza to the sisters, it doesn't cover the tzarot. But if he does chalitza to the tzarot, it covers the sisters. Why? So the Gemara says, Kasavar Shmuel ein zika. Shmuel holds ein zika, in which case he's really allowed to do yibum to those tzarot. So the Gemara says, 1 second. First things first. V'amar Shmuel yesh zika. Shmuel holds yesh zika. So the Gemara says, no. L'divrei ha'omer ein zika ka'amar. He's going according to the opinion. He's saying this halacha according to the opinion of ein zika. So if it's ein zika, that means he's allowed to do yibum to the tzarot. So the Gemara says, well, ihachi. If that's the case, then he's even technically allowed to do yibum to the sisters. So if he does chalitza to the sisters, the tzarot should also be pturot, because that chalitza will be a strong chalitza. It'll be a chalitza in a place where he was allowed to do yibum. If you say ein zika, he's allowed to do yibum to one of the sisters. So the Gemara says, Bishlam tzara de Rachel lo tipater. So if you have, let's just speak out the cases. You have Leah and Sarat Leah fell from one husband, from one man, and Rachel and Tzarat Rachel, the Tzara of Rachel, fell from another man. So if so it says the Gemara, B'shlama Tzara de Rachel lo tipater, kevan de chalatz la leleah, v'hader chalatz la Rachel, havya la chalitza de Rachel chalitza psula. So the Gemara says that in the event where he first did chalitza to Leah, okay? So the chalitza of Leah worked for the Tzara of Leah. And then afterwards, he does chalitza to Rachel. So that won't work for the tzara of Rachel because he did the chalitza that he did to Rachel, he did to achot chalutzato. Now he's not. Once he did chalitza to Leah, so let's say he was allowed to marry Leah. If you say ein zika, then he's allowed to do yibum to Leah. He does chalitza. That chalitza is good for Leah and good for the tzara of Leah. But then afterwards, he's not allowed to, once he did chalitza to Leah, Rachel becomes achot chalutzato, the sister of the guy he did chalitza to, and he's not allowed to marry, to do yibum to achot chalutzato, to Rachel anymore. And therefore, if he does chalitza to Rachel, the tzara of Rachel is not going to be p'turah. So the Gemara is asking, Bishlam tzara de Rachel lo tipater. It makes sense that the tzara of Rachel is not going to be covered by the chalitza that he did to Rachel. The came the chalitza Leah, v'hadar chalitza Rachel. Since he first did chalitza to Leah, and then afterwards he did chalitza to Rachel. Havila chalitza de Rachel, chalitza psula. The chalitza that he did to Rachel is not a strong chalitza because at the time that he did the chalitza to Rachel, Rachel was achot chalutzato. Rachel was the sister of the person who he did chalitza to, which he's not allowed to do yibum to. And since he's not allowed to do yibum to Rachel at the time that he's doing the chalitza to Rachel, it makes it that that's a chalitza psula, and it shouldn't cover her tzara. So ela tzara de Leah tipater. But the tzara of Leah, when he does chalitza to Leah first, before he did anything, he was allowed to do yibum to her if you say ein zika. So he's allowed to. He's allowed to. That chalitza covers her tzara as well. So, so why are we saying that if he does chalitza to the sisters, the tzarot don't become piturot? It's not true. If he does chalitza to the first sister, her tzara becomes piturah. So says the Gemara, "My lo nifteru tzarot." What does it mean when it says lo nifteru tzarot? Nami de ka'amar atzara de Rachel. It means the second tzara. Really, what we're coming out with is one more line. Vatzarot ka'amar I, but it says tzarot, plural. Tzarot dalma. It means in general tzarot. So what we're coming out with is, if he does chalitza, we're saying Shmuel really holds, or Shmuel is going according to the opinion ein zika. And really, when two sisters fall to him to yibum, there's no isser of achot zikukato. So he's allowed to do yibum to the first one, technically. So once he does yibum to the first one, that covers her tzara. But if he does chalitza, since he's allowed to do yibum, if he does chalitza to the first one, that covers her tzara. And then when he does chalitza to the second one, that won't cover her tzara because at that point it'll be a chalitza psula. And when we say lo nifteru tzarot, that's talking about the second sister. So the Gemara says, Yahachi chalat letzarot nifteru achayot. So the Gemara says, okay, so if that's the case, the flip side. When he does chalitza to the tzarot, nifteru achayot, the sisters become covered. Meaning, if he does chalitza to the tzara of Rachel and the tzara of Leah, that covers Rachel and Leah. So the Gemara says, well, 1 second. Atzarat Rachel mi miftara, does it really work if he does chalitza to the tzara of Rachel? Meaning, if he were to first do chalitza to Leah, he covers the tzara of Leah. Then he does chalitza to the tzara of Rachel, that won't cover Rachel. Why? Vatnan asur adam betzarat krovat chalutzato. He's not allowed to do yibum to the tzara of the sister of the lady who he did chalitza to. So if he first did chalitza to Leah, then he can't do yibum to Rachel's tzara, because he can't do yibum to the tzara of the sister of the lady who he did chalitza to, which would be the tzara of Rachel. So if he does, since he cannot do yibum, that type of chalitza will also be a chalitza psula. It'll be a weak chalitza, And therefore, he would have to do chalitza to Rachel as well. So the Gemara is asking, even if he does chalitza to tzarat Rachel, it won't cover Rachel. So the Gemara says, Shmuel nami hitchil v'lo hitchil ka'amar. So the Gemara says, Shmuel is talking about if he started with the tzarot. But if he started with the sister and ended with the tzara, you're right, that won't work either. Meaning, the Gemara explains, hitchil ba'achayot, if he started with the sister, if he started with Leah, so lo yigmor betzarot. He can't do the next chalitza to the tzara of Rachel and have that cover Rachel. He also can't do it to Rachel and have it cover the tzara. He has to do chalitza to both Rachel and Leah. D'tanan asur adam betzarat krovat chalutzato, because he's not allowed to do yibum to the tzara of Rachel once he did chalitza to Leah. He did chalitza to one lady. He cannot do yibum to her sister's tzara, and therefore the chalitza that he does to his sister's tzara is not a strong enough chalitza to cover the sister as well. But hitchil betzarot, but if he started with one of the tzarot, meaning he first did chalitza to the tzarat Leah, to not the sister but the tzara, so then he could do the second chalitza that covers Leah. Right, the first chalitza he did to tzarat Leah covers Leah. The second chalitza that he does to he could do either to Rachel or tzarat Rachel. It'll cover either one. Either one will cover the other wife. So hitchil betzarot, if he started with the tzara, he started with the tzara of Rachel. Yigmor af ba'achayot. He could even end with the sister herself, with Rachel. He could do the second chalitza to Rachel, and that would cover everybody. Because even if he does chalitza to the tzara of Leah, he would technically be allowed to do yibum to Rachel. And if he's allowed to do yibum to Rachel, that chalitza that he'll do to Rachel is going to be a full-on 100% chalitza that will cover everybody. D'tanan mutar adam bekrovat tzarat chalutzato. He's allowed to marry the relative of the tzara of the lady who he did chalitza to. So this is just to clarify, it gets a little bit confusing. So if he does chalitza to a lady, he's not allowed to marry her sister's tzara. But if he does chalitza to a lady, he's allowed to marry her tzara's sister. So if he does chalitza to Leah, he's not allowed to marry Rachel's tzara because he did chalitza to a lady. Her sister's tzara is off limits. He can't do yibum, so the chalitza that he does to her is not going to be a strong chalitza. But if he does chalitza to a lady, let's say tzarat Leah, he's allowed to marry, to do yibum to the sister of her tzara. So you did yibum to tzarat Leah, he's allowed to marry Rachel, right? The tzara of Leah, her tzara is Leah, her sister is Rachel. He's allowed to marry Rachel, and therefore the chalitza that he does to Rachel would not be a chalitza psula, since he's allowed to do yibum to her. And in that case, the chalitza that he does to Rachel would cover everybody. Okay, so says the Gemara, Rav Ashi Amar Leolam Kedaka Amrit. Rav Ashi says, really, forget this whole bending over backwards and Shmuel going like the opinion Ein Zika, and he says, no. Really, it's like we originally understood the case. You have these four ladies falling to this man. So if he does chalitza to the two sisters, that doesn't cover the tzarot. If he does chalitza to the tzarot, that covers the sisters. Now, why is it that it's not a chalitza psula if he does chalitza to the tzarot? Umishum de lo alima zika leshavui letzara ke'erva, because the zika makes it that it's not, the zika is not strong enough. Okay, tov. The zika is not strong enough to make it that the tzara, the co-wife, has the status of an erva. Meaning, he's saying like this. Really, when these four ladies fall to yibum to this guy, right? Two of them are sisters, right? You have a sister and her co-wife, and another sister and her co-wife from a different brother. So the sisters, you have an isur of achot zekukato. Really, we're saying yesh zika, and since he can't do yibum to either sister because he has a zika to sister number one, so he can't do yibum to sister number two. and he has a zikah to sister number 2, so he can't do yibum to sister number 1. They're both sisters of the lady who has a zikah to.
Sister number 1 cannot do Yevamot to sister number 2.
Correct. That's a different thing. That's achot chalutzato. Just like he can't divorce a lady and marry her sister, he can't do chalitza to a lady and marry her sister. But before that, when the two sisters fall to him, he can't marry either one because he's connected to both of them. So he's connected to the first one, he can't marry her sister. He's connected to the second one, he can't marry her sister. So in either one of those, if he does chalitza to either one of those, that's not a strong chalitza because it's chalitza in a situation where yibum would not be allowed. Now, when it comes to their co-wives, the fact that they're tsarot of achot zekukato, of lady sisters who he has a zikah to, that's not strong enough to make it that he's not allowed to do yibum to them. Meaning, it's true. If he was married to one woman, and then her sister falls to yibum, so the sister is petura and her co-wife is also petura. But in this case, he's not actually married to anybody. He just has a zikah to one of the women, so he can't marry her sister. But the tzara of her sister, he would be allowed to do yibum to. And since he would be allowed to do yibum to the tzara, so the chalitza that he does to the tzara is strong enough to cover everybody. And the Gemara says, Tanya kavate de Rav Ashi. We have a braita that goes like Rav Ashi. It says, chalatz la'achayot lo niftiru tzarot. Halatzarot niftiru achayot. It says if he does chalitza to the sisters, that doesn't cover the achayot. I'm sorry, that doesn't cover the tzarot, their co-wives. But it sounds like if he does chalitza to the co-wives, halatzarot niftiru achayot. It sounds like it covers the sisters. So, my ta'ama, what's the reason? How come if he does chalitza to the co-wives, it covers the sisters? Lav mishum de kasavri yesh zika, v'lo alima zika l'shavui letzara ke'erva. Sounds like yesh zika, therefore he can't do tzara to the sisters themselves, because each one is going to be achot zikukato. And lo alima zika l'shavui letzara ke'erva, but the zika is not strong enough to make it that the co-wife has a status of an erva. So, just side point, Tosfot asks, how is this any more of a raya than the Memra of Shmuel? That's Tosfot deals with that. But a couple more lines. Let's finish up. Amar Rabbi Abba Bar Mamal Hamani Beit Shammai. So Rabbi Abba Bar Mamal says that you have no proof to what we're saying from here, because this braita is going like Beit Shammai. Detnan Beit Shammai matirin atzarot la'achin. Beit Shammai holds that the tzarot are always mutarot. They hold that the tzara never has the status of an erva. So you have no proof from here that yesh zika and the zika is not strong enough to make the tzara like an erva. This is going in the world of Beit Shammai, where tzarat erva is not an isur anyways. The co-wife of an erva is not a problem anyway. So the Gemara says yihachi yivumei navi titiyabem. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, so let him do yibum to the tzara. Why does he have to do chalitza? So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, because we're following what Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri taught. Da'amar bo'un taken lem letzarot shiu choltzot lom Yevamot. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri said that Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel have a machloket about the tzarot. So let's just make a rule that the tzarot you always have to do chalitza. But we're going like Beit Shammai that really technically you could do yibum. But Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri taught that we're going to make a rule that you can't do yibum to the tzarot, you're going to do chalitza. So, they never enacted that law that Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri wanted to enact, that they would require chalitza for the tzarot. So, Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, acharav chazru v'tiknu. Afterwards, at a later point, they were mitaken. Okay, so, Ad Kan, we'll get ready for Shacharit.